The arrogant council. High Counselor Zixtal stood at the crystalline viewport of the Galactic Council's orbital chamber, her iridescent scales reflecting the light of distant stars. The massive structure, hovering above the neutral world of Centaurus Prime, had witnessed countless deliberations over the millennia. But never had its halls felt so heavy with dread. "The Void Swarm has consumed the Rigel sector," announced Admiral Kree, his holographic form flickering before the assembled council members. 3,000 worlds. Gone. Not conquered, consumed. The veteran warrior's forearms trembled slightly as he delivered his report, a gesture that sent ripples of unease through the chamber. High Counselor Zixtal turned from the viewport, her elongated neck arching gracefully as she addressed the gathered representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The Kithtal defense network has failed. The Meridian barrier has fallen. Even the legendary forge worlds of the Mechanids stand silent. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. We face extinction. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, each species expressing their fear in their own way. The crystalline aetheri hummed at frequencies that made the chamber's walls resonate. The gaseous vorex swirled in agitated patterns. The silicon-based lithoids ground their faceted appendages together in anxiety. Order. Commanded First Speaker Ixal, his bioengineered form pulsing with authority indicating bioluminescence. We are the Galactic Council. For 50,000 years, we have guided the development of countless species. We have weathered cosmic storms, prevented dimensional collapse, and preserved the balance of power. We will not fall to these mindless consumers. A quiet voice spoke from the far end of the chamber. There might be another option. All eyes, sensory organs, and consciousness networks turned toward Delegate Mira, the synthetics representative. The artificial being's metallic features remained impassive as she continued. The humans have developed some interesting approaches to warfare. The chamber fell silent for a moment before breaking into what could only be described as nervous laughter. High Counselor Zixtal's scales shifted to a shade of dismissive azure. The humans, the species that still primarily inhabits a single star system, the ones who achieved FTL travel barely 2 centuries ago. The same, Mira responded, unperturbed. My kind has been observing them closely. They are different. First Speaker Ixal's bioluminescence flickered with amusement. Different. They are children playing with tools they barely understand. Their ships are crude, their weapons primitive. What could they possibly offer against an enemy that devours entire sectors? Admiral Kree's hologram stepped forward. With respect, First Speaker, we are running out of options. The Void Swarm adapts to every strategy we deploy. Our most advanced weapons are becoming increasingly ineffective. Perhaps something primitive might prove unexpected enough to make a difference. High Counselor Zixtal's scales shifted to a contemplative green. You suggest we ask these humans for help. They who have not even unified their own world completely. They who still wage wars among themselves. Perhaps, Mira interjected, it is precisely because they still wage wars that they might prove valuable. When was the last time any of our species truly had to fight for survival? The humans do it constantly. Against their environment, against each other, against their own limitations. The chamber grew quiet again, but this time with thoughtful consideration rather than dismissive amusement. First Speaker Ixal's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. Very well. We shall request their assistance. But let us be clear, this is merely one of many strategies we shall pursue. The humans will serve as a distraction at best, buying time for our more advanced civilizations to develop effective countermeasures. High Counselor Zixtal returned to her viewport, her scales now a complex pattern of doubtful purples and resigned grays. Send the message, but do not expect much. After all, what could these humans possibly bring to this fight that we, with all our advancement, have not already tried? As the council members filed out of the chamber, none of them noticed the slight smile on Delegate Mira's metallic features. The synthetic had seen something in human historical records that gave her hope, a curious tendency for humanity to perform best when underestimated, a strange ability to turn disadvantage into opportunity, and an inexplicable talent for achieving the impossible simply because they hadn't realized it was supposed to be impossible. The message was sent, a simple request for aid buried among thousands of other diplomatic communications. The Council, in their arrogance, didn't even bother to mark it as urgent. They expected, at most, a token force, perhaps a few dozen ships of primitive design that could serve as a momentary distraction for the Void Swarm. They would soon learn just how wrong they were. The hidden arsenal. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of humanity's first contact station, a facility whose true nature had been hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes for over a century. While the Galactic Council saw only a modest diplomatic outpost, they were looking at merely the tip of an iceberg, one that extended through 11 dimensions of subspace. They finally asked. She said, her weathered features illuminated by the holographic display showing the Council's message. Took them long enough. Commander Jackson Drake, her XO, stood at her side, reviewing data streams from their deep space monitoring networks. The Void Swarm has already consumed more territory than we predicted. The Council's defensive strategies are... He paused, searching for a diplomatic term. Predictable. Chen finished for him. They're fighting yesterday's war with yesterday's assumptions. The swarm adapts to pattern-based responses. The more organized and systematic your defense, the more effectively it consumes you. Precisely why protocol chaos has been our primary strategy. Drake nodded. Speaking of which, the randomizer fleets are ready. All 30 of them. Chen allowed herself a small smile. While the Council had dismissed humanity as a single-system species, they had failed to notice the true scope of human expansion. Not through traditional colonies. No, humanity had learned from Earth's history about the vulnerabilities of empire building. Instead, they had created something entirely different. "Show me the arsenal," she commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing humanity's greatest secret, or rather, secrets. The arsenal was not a single fleet or weapon system. It was humanity's answer to an uncaring universe, developed over 2 centuries of paranoid preparation. While the Council saw humans as primitive newcomers to space, they hadn't realized that humanity's apparent technological lag was a carefully crafted illusion. Scattered throughout supposedly empty regions of space, hidden in dimensional pockets, and disguised as natural phenomena, were humanity's true capabilities. Quantum-entangled shipyards that could produce vessels faster than conventional physics should allow. Swarms of self-replicating drone networks that operated on principles the Council would consider impossible. Weapons that didn't so much break the laws of physics as politely convince them to look the other way for a moment. Fleet status? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. They had been ready for this moment for decades. The chaos matrices are operating at full capacity, Drake reported. Each randomizer fleet is operating on completely unique principles. No 2 ships use the same technology twice. The swarm won't be able to adapt to what it can't predict. Chen nodded, surveying the real-time updates. And the Lazarus Protocol. Ready, though I still think it's our riskiest strategy. The best ones usually are, Chen replied. The Lazarus Protocol was perhaps humanity's most audacious development, a way to weaponize failure itself. Every defeat, every lost ship, every destruction would become a weapon against the enemy. The Council fought to prevent losses. Humanity had learned to make losing itself a path to victory. A junior officer approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, we're receiving updated intelligence from our embedded observers. The Council expects us to send a token force, perhaps a few dozen ships." Chen's smile widened slightly. "Well, let's not disappoint them. Initiate protocol mirror image." Throughout hidden sectors of space, humanity's true fleet began to move. But what would arrive at the Council's coordinates would be exactly what they expected. A small, seemingly primitive fleet of exactly the size and capability they anticipated. It would serve as both a disguise and a message. Underestimate us at your peril. Send the response to the council, Chen ordered. Keep it appropriately humble. Something about being honored to assist despite our limited capabilities. And the rest of the arsenal? Drake asked. Position everything according to the chaos protocols. When the swarm adapts to one approach, we'll have 13 others ready to deploy. Let them think we're predictable right until the moment we prove we're anything but. As the orders went out, Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. The council, with all its advanced technology and ancient wisdom, had fallen into the oldest trap in human history, assuming that apparent technological inferiority meant actual inferiority. They had forgotten that technology was just a tool, and humanity had spent its entire existence learning to use tools in ways their creators never intended. Time to deployment, she asked. The decoy fleet will arrive at the Council's coordinates in 72 hours. The real arsenal. Drake checked his displays. Is already in position. Chen nodded, her expression growing serious. Then let's show the galaxy why humanity never joined the Council's defense pacts. Not because we couldn't, but because we had something better in mind. Throughout hidden sectors of space, humanity's true fleet waited in the darkness. They were ready to demonstrate that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one you can see coming. It's the one you didn't think existed at all. First contact. First blood. The Council's observation chamber was thick with anticipation as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. High Councilor Zixtal's scales flickered with barely concealed disappointment at the sight of the small formation. Exactly as they had predicted, a mere token force of 30 ships, their hulls bearing the crude aesthetics of a young spacefaring race. As expected, First Speaker Ixal noted, his bioluminescence pulsing with what could only be described as smugness. They've sent what they could spare. Let us hope they can at least provide a moment's distraction. Delegate Mira remained silent, her metallic features unreadable as she processed the sensor data that none of the Organic Council members had thought to examine more closely. The void swarm arrived exactly as their mathematical models had predicted, a writhing mass of biomechanical horror that defied conventional physics. The space around the human fleet began to distort as the swarm's reality warping field preceded its attack. At least we'll learn something from their defeat, Admiral Kree's hologram commented grimly. Perhaps. He never finished the sentence. The first human ship to be hit by the swarm's attack didn't explode, didn't disintegrate, didn't follow any of the expected patterns of destruction. Instead, it unfolded, revealing layers of technology that hadn't been visible moments before. As the swarm's corrupting influence touched its hull, the ship's apparent primitive exterior peeled away like a chrysalis, revealing something else entirely. Impossible, breathed High Councilor Zixtal, her scales shifting to a shade of shock that few of her species had ever displayed. Those energy signatures, they're changing. Mira finished for her. Every second, every interaction, every point of contact. The human ships are rewriting their own operational principles in real time. The observation chamber erupted in chaos as the sensor readings defied every known law of physics. Each human vessel was operating on different principles, using technologies that seemed to shift and transform with each passing moment. Where the swarm attempted to adapt to one ship's defenses, it found that the next ship used entirely different principles. This isn't a fleet, Admiral Kree realized, his holographic form leaning forward in fascination. It's a laboratory. They're running experiments. Indeed, each engagement between a human ship and the swarm yielded different results. Some ships absorbed the swarm's attacks, converting the energy into weapons of their own. Others seemed to phase in and out of reality, striking from dimensions the swarm couldn't access. Still others appeared to weaponize probability itself, causing cascading failures in the swarm's collective consciousness. Admiral Chen to Council Control. A calm human voice transmitted across all frequencies. Initial test phase complete. Thank you for your patience. Beginning actual deployment now. Initial test phase. First speaker Ixel's bioluminescence flickered in confusion. What does she mean by? The space around them shifted. Where there had been empty void, suddenly there were ships. Thousands upon thousands of them, emerging from hidden pockets of subspace, rising from within gas giants, materializing from what had appeared to be background radiation. The human fleet hadn't been 30 ships, that had just been the visible part of their force. Impossible, someone whispered. They couldn't have hidden this. Our surveys, our sensors, we're looking for what you expected to find. Mira stated simply. Humanity learned long ago that the best place to hide is in plain sight. You saw their primitive ships because that's what you wanted to see. The battle that followed defied description in any known language. The human fleet moved like a living thing, but not in the coordinated, predictable ways the Council's forces operated. Each ship, each squadron, each fleet operated on different principles. Where the swarm adapted to one approach, it found itself facing 12 others. From her command ship, Admiral Chen's voice remained steady, initiating Lazarus Protocol. All ships, execute randomization patterns. Remember, chaos is our ally. Unpredictability is our shield. Innovation is our sword. The Council watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated why they had never needed to join the galaxy's defense packs. They had been preparing for this moment in their own way, developing approaches that the more advanced civilizations had never considered because they defied conventional wisdom. Ships that were destroyed reformed from their own debris, their destruction converted into weapons through principles that seemed to mock causality itself. Vessels' phase shifted through dimensions, carrying pieces of the swarm into spaces where the laws of physics themselves were hostile to its existence. The human fleet didn't just fight. It evolved, adapted, transformed with each passing second. They're not just fighting the swarm, Admiral Kree realized, his holographic form showing more emotion than it had in centuries. They're teaching us how to fight it. Each ship, each tactic, they're showing us possibilities we never imagined. High Counselor Zixtal's scales had shifted to a color that hadn't been seen in her species for generations, the shade of absolute awe. So this is the human fleet, she whispered. Not just ships and weapons, but ideas given form. Not just soldiers, but scientists and experimenters, turning the battlefield itself into a laboratory of innovation. As the battle raged on, the Council began to understand what humanity had known all along. In a fight against an adaptive enemy, the greatest weapon wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was the ability to change, to innovate, to do the unexpected simply because no one had said it was impossible. The Void Swarm was learning this lesson too, but for the first time in its existence, it was learning it through defeat. The turn of the tide. The Galactic Council's emergency session looked nothing like the dignified deliberations of the past. Gone were the careful protocols and ancient ceremonies. Species that had once competed for status now huddled together, their attention fixed on the holographic displays showing humanity's ongoing battle with the Void Swarm. First Speaker Ixel's bioluminescence had dimmed to a barely visible glow. How did we not see this? How did we miss their true capabilities? Because we chose not to look. Delegate Mira responded, her metallic features animated with an unusual intensity. Humans have a concept they call hidden in plain sight. Their greatest deception wasn't what they concealed. It was what they allowed us to assume. The tactical displays told a story that defied conventional military doctrine. Human ships continued to demonstrate capabilities that shouldn't have been possible, not merely fighting the Void Swarm, but experimenting with it, learning from each encounter, evolving their strategies in real time. Admiral Kree's hologram gestured at a particular sector of space. Look at this. They're not just defeating the swarm, they're teaching it to defeat itself. Each engagement introduces new variables, new chaos into its adaptive patterns. They're weaponizing its own evolution against it. High Counselor Zixtal's scales had settled into a deep shade of contemplation. And now we face a choice. Do we continue to cling to our assumptions of superiority, or do we learn from them? The answer came from an unexpected source. The Kithtul, notorious for their rigid adherence to tradition, spoke through their representative. We wish to coordinate with the human fleet. Our remaining ships, we would like them to learn these new methods. One by one, other species followed suit. The Mechanids offered their forge worlds as manufacturing centers for human-designed weapons. The Vorex proposed using their gaseous nature to help deploy humanity's dimensional warfare techniques. Even the crystalline Etheri, who had never modified their resonance-based technology in 10,000 years, requested human assistance in developing new frequencies. Admiral Chen's response to these requests was characteristically direct. Our training facilities are open to all species willing to unlearn what they think they know about warfare. Leave your assumptions at the door. Bring your imagination. The transformation that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Species that had prided themselves on their technological superiority found themselves eagerly learning from humans who approached problems with what seemed like reckless creativity. The rigid hierarchy of galactic civilization began to dissolve, replaced by a network of innovation and experimentation. On a secure channel, Commander Drake reported to Admiral Chen, "The Council species are adapting faster than we expected. The Mechanids have already integrated quantum uncertainty principles into their forge processes. The Etheri are experimenting with chaos harmonics." "Good," Chen replied, watching as a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels executed a maneuver that would have been considered impossible weeks ago. They're learning that technology isn't about having the most advanced tools. It's about how you use what you have. The Void Swarm, for the first time in its existence, found itself facing not just one enemy, but 1,000 different approaches, each operating on different principles, each introducing new variables into its adaptive algorithms. Where it had once consumed civilizations by adapting to their predictable patterns, it now faced a galaxy that was learning to embrace chaos and uncertainty. First Speaker Ixel, watching a group of young Council species representatives eagerly absorbing human tactical theories, turned to Delegate Mira. "We thought we were accepting their help. In reality, they're transforming our entire civilization." Mira's metallic features formed what might have been a smile. That's the most human thing about them. They don't just solve problems. They change how everyone thinks about what's possible. As the combined fleets pushed the swarm back sector by sector, the galaxy was learning a lesson that humanity had known since its earliest days. True advancement doesn't come from perfecting what you already know, but from being willing to try what everyone else thinks is impossible. The tide hadn't just turned in the war against the Void Swarm. It had turned in the very nature of galactic civilization itself. A new order. The Galactic Council chamber had changed. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies and formal separations between species, now representatives mingled freely. Holographic displays showed the ongoing transformation of galactic civilization. Shipyards producing hybrid vessels that combine multiple species technologies, research centers where different races worked side by side, and the steadily retreating edge of Void Swarm territory. High Counselor Zixel's scales shimmered with a new color, one that her species had developed to represent hope blended with humility. 6 months ago, we thought ourselves the pinnacle of civilization. How quickly we've learned otherwise. Admiral Chen stood before the council, not as a supplicant, but as an equal. The formal robes of office they'd offered her remained folded on a nearby table, unused. She preferred her standard uniform, a choice that spoke volumes about humanity's approach to power. "The Void Swarm has been pushed back beyond the galactic rim," she reported. "More importantly, we've confirmed that its adaptive capabilities have been permanently compromised. It can no longer form coherent strategies against our combined forces, because it can't adapt to what it can't predict." First Speaker Ixel observed, his bioluminescence pulsing in patterns that would have been considered chaotic by his species' former standards. "And we've become very unpredictable indeed." The chamber's displays showed the latest statistics. Over 3,000 different technological approaches now being used against the swarm, each one unique, each one contributing to the cascade of chaos that prevented it from establishing stable patterns. What had once been a unified galactic defense force had become a tapestry of innovation and experimentation. But the real victory isn't military, is it? Delegate Mira asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Chen smiled. The swarm forced us all to evolve, but not in the way it intended. Look around you. Species that once competed now collaborate. Technologies that were hoarded are now freely shared and improved upon. The rigid structures that made galactic civilization vulnerable to the swarm's adaptations have been replaced by something far more resilient: chaos and creativity working in harmony. The evidence was everywhere. The mechanids, once purely logical, now incorporated randomness into their calculations. The Etheri had discovered that their crystalline resonance could create entirely new forms of matter when combined with human quantum theories. The Vorex had learned to exist in 17 new dimensions after collaborating with human physicists. We propose a new structure for galactic governance. First Speaker Ixel announced, his bioluminescence steady. No more hierarchies based on technological advancement or age. Instead, we create something new. A network of innovation and exchange. The human approach, as it's being called, High Counselor Zixtal added, where advancement comes not from perfecting what we know, but from constantly questioning our assumptions and embracing new possibilities. Commander Drake, standing at Chen's side, displayed the latest data. The results speak for themselves. More technological and social advancement in 6 months than in the previous 1,000 years. Species that were once considered primitive are contributing breakthrough theories. Former enemies are combining their knowledge to solve problems neither could tackle alone. And humanity's role in all this? Mira asked, though her metallic features suggested she already knew the answer to this as well. Chen's response was characteristically direct. We'll do what we've always done. Explore. Experiment. Ask the questions nobody else thinks to ask. Push the boundaries not because we're superior, but because we're too stubborn to accept that boundaries are permanent. The chamber erupted in what each species would later describe differently. Laughter, agreement, resonance, quantum harmony, but all carrying the same essential meaning. Acceptance of a new way forward. The galaxy feared the void swarm would consume us all. First Speaker Ixel observed. Instead, it forced us to become something greater than we were. Not through uniformity, but through diversity. Not through perfection, but through endless innovation. High Counselor Zixtal's scales shifted through colors that represented the complex journey from arrogance to wisdom. We thought ourselves the teachers of younger races, only to discover we had become trapped by our own certainty. The humans reminded us of something we have forgotten. That the greatest wisdom lies not in knowing all the answers, but in never stopping asking questions. As the former council chamber transformed into something new, a center for galactic cooperation and innovation, humanity's greatest contribution became clear. They hadn't saved civilization by being more advanced or more powerful. They had saved it by reminding the galaxy that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the endless capacity to adapt, to change, and to imagine new possibilities. The void swarm had sought to consume the galaxy. Instead, it had catalyzed its rebirth. And at the heart of this transformation was a species that had never stopped questioning, never stopped innovating, never accepted that anything was truly impossible. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful force isn't the most advanced technology or the most ancient wisdom. It's the simple, stubborn refusal to accept limitations as permanent. And that, perhaps, was humanity's greatest gift to the stars.